Hear me out. A common phrase nowadays within the academic community, but sadly one that is far too often misused. People using this phrase to describe conventionally attractive characters. Characters like Cammy from Street Fighter, or characters like 2B from Nier, or even characters like Scolio, Elastigirl from The Incredibles. Now, obviously, any sane person would find any of the aforementioned characters attractive. So, when people say, "hear me out," what exactly am I supposed to be hearing? Let's find out in today's class. My name is Professor Lando, and welcome to another lecture here at Louie University, home of the Catboys. Now, I asked my students to submit their best hear me out for me to evaluate and grade in today's class. But first, what exactly are the correct parameters for an acceptable hear me out? There are two main requirements for an acceptable hear me out. The first one being, the character must not be conventionally attractive. And ideally, the less conventional, the better. And the second requirement is that the character must have some sort of subversive or innate goonable quality. And this might take the form in one of two ways, either physical or emotional. And if you're confused on what that means, maybe some examples will help elucidate it for you. Now, let me show you some of my personal hear me outs that might serve as an example for what we're looking for. Heimlich, the caterpillar from Bug's Life. Now for the physical aspect, these soft and supple ridges that segment the caterpillar's body are undoubtedly going to be a pleasant physical sensation. Imagine the ribbed pleasure as you feel your way over it. Tuk, 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 tuk. Can't ignore the multiple hands and feet. But perhaps more importantly, I'm interested in the emotional intelligence of the caterpillar. I find it very attractive that he has goals and aspirations, of course, wanting to become a big, beautiful butterfly. My next example is going to be Eve from Wall-E. I guess Pixar really knows how to make them. Obviously not conventional due to the lack of humanoid proportions. Eve does, however, convey a bit of femininity, perhaps some sensuality, with the shapes involved here. Very sleek, slender design. That, paired with her personality, bit of a tsundere, at first acting a bit cold towards Wall-E, but eventually showing much affection. So it's that playful nature combined with her sleek, slender appearance that make her a perfect hear me out. My last example, Samus from Metroid. Now I know what you're thinking, Professor, that is definitely a conventionally attractive character. And you would be correct, but I'm not talking about her Zero Suit Samus form. No, I'm thinking of a different form. And you might be thinking, oh, I know what you're talking about. You must be thinking of Samus's armored suit. And I like that you're thinking out of the box, but the form I'm thinking of is not even this one, but rather Samus in her morph ball form, the form she takes when she rolls up into a little ball. Now you might be confused on this example right here, so allow me to give you a bit of a visual. Imagine Samus in her morph ball as this watermelon. And now imagine further picking up Samus in her morph ball form and ripping off some of that armor. And on the inside, Samus. I bet she's real sweaty from rolling around as a morph ball all day. So for Samus and you, this would be a sort of a BDSM, but instead of latex and rope, you have Samus rolled up into a ball. And that's what makes Samus in her morph ball form such a great hear me out, because you're only really limited by your creativity here. So for this assignment, students can either pass or fail. But if I find their submission especially good, that student will get a gold star. DGamer014's Hear Me Out is Melania from Elden Ring, and they note, "I'm willing to be infected with scarlet rot." Although Melania on the surface is a conventionally attractive woman, she is afflicted with the scarlet rot. which, if you're unfamiliar, Scarlet Rot, described in the game, is one of the divine elements of the outer gods, whatever that means, and, quote, eats away at life like a vicious plague. So you would get some sort of incredibly debilitating, I assume painful, and most importantly deadly disease by partaking with Melania. But Melania is also estimated to be around 8 foot tall, so mommy. Melania is a pass. King Soul's Hear Me Out is Tai Lung from Kung Fu Panda. They note, he big and strong and aggressive and fluffy and mean. We can note a very strong build, very broad shoulders, an aggressive demeanor, combined with a typical bad boy attitude. I would have to say that Tai Lung from Kung Fu Panda is quite conventional in terms of taste, and for the context of Hear Me Out, perhaps the only thing not conventional about him is the fact that he is a furry character, an anthropomorphic animal, but by today's standards, I would find this particular type of furry, it would be hard-pressed to call it not conventional these days. Fail. Tortellini's Hear Me Out is Louie from the Pikmin series. I think first off, I would like to point out that Louie is wearing protective gear, so you know he's going to be safe. But more importantly than that, I think we need to note that Louie and Olimar can command an army of Pikmin, a horde of tiny creatures that obey their any command. Louie can have all these Pikmin do whatever he wants. Now, when it comes to the physical sensations, just imagine a bunch of Pikmin commanded by Louie. He's in the corner, perhaps in the cuck chair in a way, blowing his whistle, and all the Pikmin. I'm gonna have to give this one my first gold star. Pastrami's Hear Me Out is Echo from Overwatch, and they note, ever since this character released back in 2020, I swear I have been more and more into robots. I was rewired, and I will not go back. I would call this a borderline case, personally. I think that Echo, for the most part, has pretty humanoid proportions, is pretty conventionally attractive in the sense that it kind of looks like a slender, curvy woman. But upon further inspection, there is an odd creepiness about her. The face, no hair, and being this sort of mannequin-esque look does kind of make her slightly unnerving, but still retaining a bit of that attractiveness. And in terms of the body, if you look here, particularly the leg and arm joints, I do appreciate that in some sort of robotic, gravitational, anti-gravitational sense, are detached from the pelvis and the torso. So this is a hard call for me, but overall, I think I would just barely pass Echo. Also, she's got some major DSLs on her. Dove's Hear Me Out submission is the stand Notorious B.I.G. from JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, noting that it has infinite durability. So I assume the appeal would be the sort of squishy, soft texture being exposed underneath these armored parts. I assume something almost like a brain. And for those of you who are unfamiliar, the stand Notorious B.I.G. from JoJo's Bizarre Adventure grows exponentially by absorbing energy and is, like the student stated, invincible. So in theory, the goonage could be exponential. As you goon, it will absorb the energy, becoming bigger, perhaps squishier, and long-lasting, most importantly. But I think you forget the activation requirement for this stand's power. In order for Notorious B.I.G. to activate its powers, its user must be deceased. Now, I'm not sure by what manner you could make this occur, but here at Ligma University, I can't advocate violence or aggression against any persons, unless it's the person driving the truck flashing their high beams at me. Is there not a limit to how bright headlights can be? It's crazy, man. I could barely. So in consideration for a Hear Me Out, I'm going to have to give this one a fail. Angie's Hear Me Out submission is an In-N-Out double-double, animal style. And they note, double the meat, double the fun. Well, Let's find out. We do in fact have a double-double, but what are the contents? Let's take a peek in there. Seems like, yeah, we do have 2 patties, thus the double-double. You could see there we have pickles. We got the lettuce right there. But why don't we find out? Let's take a bite. I actually haven't eaten all day. I don't usually when I film these. Man. I the shit out of that burger. Pass. Zach490's Hear Me Out submission is the Buc-ee's Beaver. Although Buc-ee is, I assume Buc-ee is the name of the beaver, is simply that, a big beaver, I think that there are a lot of perks with this specific Hear Me Out. With 54 locations in the United States, Buc-ee's is most likely a very accomplished and wealthy business beaver. Buc-ee locations offer fuel, ethanol-free fuel, as well as EV charging, not to mention the countless food items and choices that they serve to the countless of customers on a daily basis. Most importantly, the official Buc-ee's website claims that Buc-ee's has the cleanest restrooms in America. Well, maybe not after Buc-ee and I get our time in there. You're gonna have to close down for renovations because, I'll tell you what, there's nothing I like more than a big, hairy beaver. I'm giving Buc-ee's a gold star. Vic Viper's Hear Me Out submission is Princey the Spider Devil from Chainsaw Man, noting, Hear Me Out, 8 times the fun. Now, I think it's not a stretch to say that the non-conventional part about the Spider Devil, or Princey, I believe her name is, would be the 8 gigantic, grotesque spider legs that are razor sharp and could pierce through an entire person's body. She also has a zipper going down the middle of her face. Otherwise, the top half is pretty standard, pretty conventional of a woman. I mean, people do have a primal fear of spiders for a reason, but in evaluating this Hear Me Out, there's an important question to ask, and that has to do with the 8 legs, of course. Here we have 2 different models, 2 different versions of a bottom to top view of the Spider Devil. Now, my question is, when it comes to points of entry, we assume for each pair of legs, there's going to be 1. But since the Spider Devil has 8 legs, is there going to be a point of entry for each pair of legs? Or is there only a single point of entry in the center of the legs, almost like a squid? And I know what you're thinking, students. I'm sure most of you would prefer Model A. But might I say that perhaps it would get a little difficult and awkward to navigate between all the legs. And remember, they're razor sharp, they can pierce your body. But with 1, you can get right up to the center and be nuzzled in the grasp of all the spider legs all at once, and perhaps a more satisfying experience. But if I'm being honest, either one works with me. I'm gonna give the Spider Devil a pass. ArcVizzle's Hear Me Out is experiment number 210 from Gravity Falls, specifically Season 2, Episode 2, and notes that it functions like Ditto from Pokemon. It can literally turn into anyone just by licking their DNA. So conceptually with this Hear Me Out, we have something like a Ditto who can transform into anyone or anything. But there's an important caveat here. With this creature, it can literally turn into anyone, but by licking their DNA. You have to consider that your options, I assume, unless you're some sort of detective or spy, are going to be quite limited. As an average person, you might have access to maybe your own DNA or your household, which I imagine would include your mom and dad, maybe brother, sister, or your dog. Not quite the breadth of options I would like with my Hear Me Out. So unfortunately, I'm gonna have to give this one a fail. 805 Rats Hear Me Out is Gwen from Total Drama Island. I mean, that my friend is just an incredibly attractive goth girl with short hair, perky melons, tight waist, and wide hips. I can't think of anything more conventionally attractive than that. I'm afraid I'm gonna have to fail you. Cat HQ1's Hear Me Out is Cessna 172. I believe that is an airplane, and notes, my beloved.
Airplanes, yes. The Cessna 172 is, I assume, a name for a specific type of airplane. And similar to Eve from Wall-E, we have sleek, curvy shape line expression, so I do understand that. But in terms of people gooning to airplanes, there is a whole other world out there. Not only do people find actual airplanes attractive, the interest has spawned multiple subgenres, like plane anthros. Similar to a furry character, people anthropomorphize planes in a very sensual nature to where they're like kind of like a thick animal-like plane thing. And speaking of furries, there is an even further subgenre of furry plane anthros, where they're like the aforementioned plane anthro, but furry versions of them. So when it comes to the goonability of airplanes, it seems like I'm not one to deny. Pass. That's all for class today, students. I hope you learned something and will use the phrase "hear me out" more accurately in the future. I'd like to thank my supporters on Patreon, and especially to the students, who I'm about to call, for detention after class. Kami, Klaus, Leafy T, Haley, Fastra, Dreamy, Blurry Pixel, Kismet Nightingale, Crystal Vu, Henry Joe, Scrambo, Jules, Hacky Sack, Keiko, and Liad is Gay. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next lecture. Students, we have just reached an incredible milestone. This YouTube channel here has just reached 1 million subscribers. That's 1 million students and 1 million eager minds. I want to thank my dear friends and family, as well as all of you students who came to class every lesson, ready to learn something new. From Furries to Fanboys or Twinks to Twunks, I'm incredibly proud of everything we've done, and I'm looking forward to what Ligma University can do in the future. Thank you, and go Catboys! Oh my